There are moments in life when grief feels like a closed door, when silence becomes heavier than words, and when the heart longs for just one sign that love beyond this world still reaches us. Tonight's story follows a woman who carried a sorrow deeper than anyone around her could see. A widow driving alone on a quiet evening when something impossible happened. A handprint appeared beside her on the empty seat at the exact moment she whispered the name of her son who was no longer alive. What unfolded afterward became a reminder that heaven is closer than we think, that God listens even when we speak softly, and that love never dies. Welcome, dear friend. This is Faith Light Stories, where every story reminds us that God never leaves us. Please like, share, and subscribe. She had driven this road hundreds of times before, yet tonight felt different, as if the sky itself leaned closer to listen to her thoughts while the fading sunset brushed the clouds with pale gold. Her hands trembled slightly on the wheel because the quiet space beside her always reminded her of what she had lost, and no matter how many months had passed, she still whispered his name, the way mothers do when love refuses to end. She had promised herself she would not cry tonight, but promises like these rarely win against longing that blooms without warning. And as she passed the old oak tree near the edge of town, she felt memories rising like breath against cold glass. Her son had loved that tree because he once believed it looked like something out of a fairy tale, and every time they drove by, he would press his tiny hand against the window and say that the branches were waving back at him. She could still hear the soft echo of his laugh, the way light used to bend toward him, and that sound alone was enough to break her resolve until tears quietly touched her cheeks without her noticing. She inhaled deeply, gripping the steering wheel as if holding on to the last piece of the world she could control, and then she whispered a prayer she had not dared to speak aloud for months, asking God if her boy was safe, asking if love reached heaven, asking if there was any way to feel him again, even just for a moment, even just long enough to breathe without that sharp ache beneath her ribs. The hum of the engine filled the silence, but something shifted in the air, a warmth spreading softly through the cabin, as if the night itself leaned forward in compassion, and she blinked, thinking maybe she imagined it, because grief sometimes plays tricks on tired hearts. But then she saw it clear as day, a small handprint slowly appearing on the fabric of the empty passenger seat. Right beside her, the same seat her son had filled with joy and questions and sunlight only a year before. She gasped, gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles paled, her breath catching in her throat, because she knew that handprint by heart, every line, every curve, every tiny shape that once pressed against her cheek when he used to climb onto her lap after school. Her chest shuddered as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing, but logic fell silent the way it does when heaven steps into the room, and she felt something more powerful than fear, something like peace blooming inside her chest with a gentleness she had forgotten existed. She whispered his name again, barely a breath, yet the air seemed to respond with a hush of presence, a quiet reassurance that she was not as alone as she believed. The handprint did not fade quickly, it remained visible as if resting there in comfort, and she placed her own trembling hand over it, feeling no physical pressure yet, feeling warmth so real, her tears became a river of release, not pain. In that moment, she remembered the night she lost him, how the hospital lights felt too bright, how time fractured, how her knees nearly gave out when the doctor looked at her with sorrow in his eyes, and how for months she carried guilt, thinking she could have changed something, done something, saved him. But this moment, this impossible gentle moment, broke through that guilt with a truth she could feel more than understand. A truth that love had not abandoned her, that God had not turned away, that her son was not lost but held in a place where pain could not reach him. She kept driving, not wanting to disturb whatever miracle had settled beside her, and The road ahead blurred through tears, but her hand steadied her. Breathing steadied, her heart steadied as if a quiet hand rested on her soul. She spoke to him softly, telling him she missed him, telling him she loved him, telling him that the world had grown dim without his laughter, and she felt a warmth spread across her shoulder like a tiny lean of affection, the way he used to rest his head against her when he grew sleepy during long rides home. She whispered thank you over and over because she knew this moment was not meant to last forever, but it was enough to remind her that heaven listens enough to heal the part of her heart that believed she had been abandoned, enough to lift her from the shadows she had walked through alone for far too long. As she drove toward the edge of town, the handprint slowly faded, but not in a way that brought sorrow. Instead, it faded like a blessing, a soft farewell that carried hope within its disappearing outline. And when it vanished completely, she felt a strength she had not felt since the day she said goodbye at the hospital. The night around her seemed brighter, the stars sharper, the air gentler, and she realized that grief had not left her, but it had changed shape, transforming from a weight into a bridge, a way to feel the love that still connected her to her child across the unseen distance between earth and eternity. She whispered a final prayer, thanking God for hearing her, for comforting her, for giving her a sign so tender it could only have come from a place where love is perfect and unbroken. She knew she would still miss him every day, but now she also knew she would never walk alone again. And with that truth settling deep inside her, she smiled through tears for the first time in months, letting grace lift the corners of her heart as the road stretched warmly toward home. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need hope tonight. And if you believe that God still speaks in quiet ways, comment, I believe. Thank you for watching Faith Light Stories. Please like, share, and subscribe.